the annals of human depravity, few names evoke such visceral horror as Caligula, the Roman emperor who transformed the mightiest empire on earth into his personal playground of death, debauchery, and divine delusion. What you're about to witness is not merely the story of a mad ruler, but a chilling examination of how absolute power can corrupt absolutely, turning a promising young man into a monster whose cruelty would make even the most hardened executioner weep. This is the forbidden history that Rome tried desperately to erase, a tale so dark that ancient historians whispered it in shadows, fearing that even speaking his name might summon his ghost back to terrorize the living. The year was 37 AD, when Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, known to history as Caligula, ascended to the throne of Rome at just 24 years old. The empire that had conquered the known world, built upon disciplined legions and calculated brutality, was about to witness 4 years of madness that would redefine the very concept of tyranny. What began as the hopeful reign of a beloved prince would spiral into an orgy of violence so extreme that it shocked even a civilization accustomed to crucifixions and gladiatorial combat. The sources for this dark chronicle come from the most respected historians of antiquity, whose Lives of the 12 Caesars provides intimate and horrifying details of Caligula's excesses. Tacitus, the master chronicler of imperial corruption, and Cassius Dio, whose Roman history preserves testimonies from those who witnessed the madness firsthand. These men risked their lives to document what they saw, knowing that future generations needed to understand how quickly civilization could crumble under the weight of unchecked power. To understand the depths of Caligula's depravity, we must first examine the corrupted soil from which this poisonous flower bloomed. Born into the Julio-Claudian dynasty, young Gaius was raised in a world where murder was politics and politics was survival. His great-grandfather was Augustus, the first Roman emperor who established the Principate through calculated violence and political genius. His grandfather Tiberius ruled through fear and paranoia, while his father Germanicus was beloved by the legions of popularity that may have cost him his life through poison. The nickname Caligula, meaning little boot, came from his childhood, spent among his father's soldiers on the Germanic frontier. Adored by the legions, the boy wore miniature military gear and marched proudly beside hardened veterans. This early exposure to military life and the casual brutality of Roman warfare would later manifest in his obsession with gladiatorial games and public executions. The innocent child who once charmed hardened soldiers would grow into a man who found genuine pleasure in watching others suffer. But his path to power was paved with tragedy. Emperor Tiberius, paranoid in his later years, systematically eliminated rivals to his throne. Caligula's mother, Agrippina, the elder, was exiled and starved to death. His brothers Nero and Drusus were imprisoned and killed. Only Caligula's apparent harmlessness, his youth, charm, and reputation as a theatrical dilettante saved him from joining them in death. Tiberius famously remarked that he was nursing a viper for the Roman people, a prophecy that would prove horrifyingly accurate. When Tiberius died in 37 AD, possibly smothered by Caligula himself, according to some accounts, the young prince inherited an empire stretching from Britain to Egypt. The Roman Senate, exhausted by Tiberius's reign of terror, welcomed Caligula with genuine enthusiasm. They had no idea they were trading one monster for another. At first, Caligula seemed a golden savior. He distributed bonuses to the Praetorian Guard, urban cohorts, and fire brigades, bought loyalty with blood money, recalled political exiles, released prisoners, and even published the imperial budget for scrutiny. The Roman people, starved for hope, embraced their new emperor with worshipful devotion. Caligula dazzled the masses with extravagant gladiatorial games and chariot races, spending lavishly on entertainment. Exotic animals were slaughtered, gladiators fought from dawn to dusk, and Caligula himself presided over the carnage with disturbing joy. Even then, careful observers noted something chilling. His laughter during bloodshed lasted too long. His eyes followed the pooling blood too intently, and servants whispered that he returned alone to the empty amphitheater at night to walk the bloodstained sand. For a brief time, Caligula appeared competent, even intelligent, handling diplomacy with surprising skill. He completed Tiberius's unfinished projects, restored theaters, and initiated public works. Foreign envoys described him as eloquent. Yet behind this promising facade, the seeds of madness germinated. 8 months into his reign, Caligula fell gravely ill. Ancient accounts describe symptoms modern scholars attribute to possible encephalitis, epilepsy, or brain damage. Whatever the illness, when he recovered, he was changed. The emperor who rose from his sickbed was no longer the same man. His voice had grown harsh, his eyes burned with manic intensity, and he claimed to commune directly with the gods. Romans who once prayed desperately for his recovery would soon pray just as fervently for his death. After his illness, Caligula's cruelty blossomed. Where before he showed aristocratic indifference to suffering, now he actively sought opportunities to cause pain. He devised elaborate punishments, delighted in humiliation, and indulged sadistic fantasies. The first clear sign was his obsessive relationship with his beloved sister Drusilla, whom he forced to divorce her husband and live with him as his wife. Their incestuous union scandalized Rome, but Caligula enforced it with threats of death. When Drusilla died suddenly in 38 AD, he declared her a goddess and made denial of her divinity a capital crime. For months, it was illegal to laugh, bathe, or dine with one's family. Violators were executed. His paranoia deepened. He forced senators to suicide based on dreams in which they appeared threatening. Marcus Junius Silenus, a respected senator, was executed because Caligula dreamed he was dangerous. In Caligula's Rome, even appearing in the emperor's nightmares could mean death. The Senate became a stage for his madness. Caligula appeared dressed as gods Jupiter with thunderbolt, Neptune with trident, Venus in women's clothing, demanding senators crawl to him on hands and knees, kissing his feet before speaking. Hesitation meant execution and confiscation of wealth. His dinner parties became theaters of terror. Guests might be entertained with wit and spectacle one moment, then executed the next for imagined slights. The palace turned into a labyrinth where the wrong expression could mean death, and then came his self-deification. Caligula erased the line between emperor and god. Statues of himself replaced those of Jupiter and Apollo. Citizens were forced to sacrifice to his image. Failure to display sufficient enthusiasm meant execution. What Rome had gained was not a ruler, but a god-king in his own fevered mind. Caligula's court soon descended into a carnival of sexual excess and ritualized cruelty. He instituted orgies where senators and their wives were forced to participate while he watched from a throne, deciding who would live or die based on performance. He raped married women before their husbands' eyes, publicly mocked their bodies, and forced men to smile in agreement. He maintained stables of prostitutes, male and female, and forced nobles, their children, and even his sisters, into his twisted games. He claimed these acts were sacred rites, demanding worship of his body as divine. Blasphemous sexual rituals turned Rome's palace into a brothel of terror. Children were not spared. Ancient accounts allege that he violated the young daughters of senators, forcing their parents to watch and thank him for the honor. Rape became prelude to execution, a grotesque theater of humiliation. The gladiatorial games under Caligula reached unimaginable extremes. Aristocrats were stripped and raped in the arena before being slaughtered. When criminals ran low, Caligula ordered sections of the crowd themselves seized, abused, and fed to wild beasts. Rome's amphitheater, once a symbol of engineering glory, became a slaughterhouse of sexualized violence. Meanwhile, he squandered the vast fortune left by Tiberius. Within a year, billions of sesterces were gone. Desperate, he revived treason trials, executing the wealthy to seize their property. He taxed marriages, lawsuits, prostitution, even silence during his speeches. He demanded citizens pay for the privilege of breathing in his presence. Perhaps his most infamous insult was appointing his horse, incitatus, a sconso, housed in marble, fed from ivory mangers, dressed in purple. The horse embodied his mockery of the Senate. To Caligula, senators were worth less than beasts. His megalomania birthed absurd projects. He built a bridge across the Bay of Naples, simply to ride across wearing Alexander the Great's armor. He ordered armies to collect seashells, declaring them spoils of war from Neptune. He staged a fake conquest of Britain, returned to Rome, and celebrated a triumph over lands he had never set foot on. By 41 AD, Rome had had enough. Even the Praetorian Guard, once his enforcers, had grown weary of carrying out his humiliating, sadistic commands. Their loyalty shattered under constant mockery, cruelty, and arbitrary killings. Centurion Cassius Chaerea, repeatedly humiliated by Caligula, emerged as the leader of a conspiracy. Senators, officers, and even freedmen, all, bound by fear and desperation, plotted together. Their goal was not ideology, but survival. On January 24, 41 AD, during the Palatine Games, Caligula enjoyed performances filled with staged assassinations, never realizing his own death loomed. As he left the theater, through a narrow corridor beneath the palace, conspirators struck. The first blow cut deep into his neck. 30 wounds followed. Suetonius claims his last words were, "I am still alive." The self-proclaimed god discovered he was mortal, after all. Panic swept Rome. The Senate feared retaliation from Caligula's Germanic guards. 4 hours. Chaos threatened civil war. But then, hiding behind a curtain, they found his uncle Claudius. Desperate for stability, the Praetorian Guard proclaimed him emperor. Rome was saved not by plan, but by accident. The Senate ordered Caligula's memory erased damnatio. His statues were smashed, inscriptions defaced, his name cursed. Yet erasure ensured remembrance. The monster they tried to forget became immortal in infamy. Historians ever since have debated his madness, epilepsy, bipolar disorder, brain damage, or was he simply a psychopath unleashed by absolute power? Whatever the truth, Caligula became a warning. How fragile civilization is. How quickly it collapses when one man's cruelty is unchecked. His reign reminds us that tyranny is not unique to Rome. It is a recurring danger. Initial popularity, paranoia, spectacle, cruelty, destruction of institutions. These patterns echo through history's tyrants. Caligula's story forces us to confront a grim reality. Civilization is fragile. Morality is not guaranteed, and power in the wrong hands can turn society into a nightmare. Rome survived Caligula, but the lesson endures for every age. Unchecked power leads not to glory but to horror.